Greetings, exporters. Welcome to IBT Online's Go Global webinar series. Today, we're really excited to be talking about exporting to Germany and how to use your website to grow your sales, brands, and business in Germany. So we have a great program for you today, and it's really exciting to be talking about one of the most important economies in the world, a very sophisticated online environment, and we hope we have a lot of tips and hope for you there. While we're waiting for the very last people just to log on, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping first of all. So our webinar is going to be about 45 minutes long, so we've scheduled some time at the end for questions. Would really appreciate your questions. Just drop them into the chat box, and we will curate them and get to them at the end. During the webinar, we're going to have 4 polls, and we would really appreciate if you could all, step in and click on the answers that suit you best for the polls. These help us direct the webinar a little bit as well. At the end of the webinar, we also have a very, very short survey. I think it's like 6 questions, yes and no questions. We would, again, really appreciate it if you could just answer that survey. It just helps us to find new topics for the webinars and see where your big concerns are for exporting. So then finally, also, this is part of a series of webinars, our Go Global webinar series. And we have a large library of webinars if you wanted to click on our website and ibt.onl and look at the resources page. You'll find lots of webinars there about everything that's possible online, internationally, localized websites, online marketing, and so on. So it's really, really a great pleasure to introduce ourselves. And I'm first going to introduce my colleague, Bella Zerhausen. Bella is an online marketing manager with us, originally from Germany, and it's a real pleasure that she's joining us here today to talk about German websites, German social media, how Germans engage, how to grow your business with German businesses and consumers. And on the right-hand side is me. My name is Susanna, and I'm the Chief Content Officer for IBT Online. And I've been with IBT for a while, and I guess it's just interesting to me how this title, Chief Content Officer, is now a normal title for people in the web, and just shows you how important, I guess, content has become. So without, well, I guess I probably should introduce the company too. IBT Online stands for International Business and Technologies Online. And we are 100% focused on online tools for international companies. So helping exporters grow brands, sales, businesses globally. And we do that with websites, localized websites, and international online marketing and social media. We have also organized state programs, online global programs, they're called, within the various US states. And if you come from certain states, then you will be supported by that state to get websites and online marketing. So look around and take advantage of anything that you see on that. So without further ado, I'm going to start the webinar now talking about Powerhouse Germany. Oh, sorry, I got the wrong way. Here we go. Powerhouse Germany. So here's our agenda of the day. We're going to talk about sort of, broad brush, Germany in that sense, then dig down into Germany Online and why we think you exporters all need German websites. Then going to talk about what makes a great website for Germany. What are the attributes that we would be looking for websites in Germany? Get through some case studies and best practices, and then save some time for questions at the end. So first of all, let's talk about Powerhouse Germany. Now, I think this is quite interesting. We've given a little bit of a comparative table here, Germany and the USA. I mean, it's quite something really to compare a country like Germany, which is a fraction of the size of the USA, but nevertheless, it is the 4th largest country and the 4th largest GDP in the world. And I think what I really just want to, for a takeaway here, I just want 3 things. One, it is large. It is a very, very significant market. And I'll come to that in a moment. 2, it's very prosperous. And if you look at GDP per purchasing power, In fact, that it's actually above the United States, and so on. It is also extremely business-minded and business-focused. So a lot of people say it's hard to do business in Germany. We find no, there are complications, there are difficulties, there are hurdles. You have to be very serious, long-term, and committed. But it is a very, very rewarding market as well. Just in terms of like size, I think it's important to sort of look at Germany's place in the world. You know, Germany is large by any standards. It has Europe's largest population at 82 million. That's equivalent to about a quarter of the United States. Or I put it diagrammatically here. It's equivalent to your 3 most populated states combined. California, Texas, and Florida combined equals Germany. So that's pretty good too. And then of course, it's also, Germany is also Europe's largest economy in GDP terms, but it's large by a seriously large amount. It's about $1 trillion above the number 2, which is France and the UK tied for 2nd place. So Germany is the 4th largest economy in the world, ranked by GDP. But if you put that in perspective, it's about 1.5 times the GDP of India. It is 3 times the GDP of Russia, 2.5 times the GDP of Canada. And finally, Germany really is a manufacturing powerhouse. And you can tell this by its positive trade balance year after year after year. German exports, 1.5 trillion. Now the USA was about 1.6 trillion. So again, in terms of scale, Germany is pretty well the same size in terms of exports as the entire of the United States. So there's a couple of big numbers. There's something else I wanted to point out. We talked about 82 million people in Germany as German speakers. The thing about websites is that they're quite good at reaching, sort of just seeping into neighboring areas. Now, some of the keywords might be different, and there might be some, and we'll get on to that in a minute, but you know, there's actually, if you look at the German-speaking population in Europe, it's more like about 100 million. If you include Austria, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, little parts of Belgium, and parts of the Czech Republic here. So, you know, there's quite a lot, sort of 80, you know, with that makes a total of 87 million. Then there's about 9 million second language German speakers as well. So, and these very, very porous borders. I think that's also important when we start talking about e-commerce. The Polish-German border there is one of the most porous in the world. It's you live on one side, you go work on the other. There's very, very strong connection there. And equally, the German-Dutch border is I mean, they're all have without borders, but they're really very, very fluid borders. Last thing I really want to point out about Germany in its structure is just that it is composed of these 16 what are called Länder, they're states, and it's quite state specific. So you'll have, you know, the individual states there. You'll have there's 16 of them in total, and they have a strong identity. They have strong character. So someone in Schleswig-Holstein would have a different view on things than someone in Baden-Württemberg, for example. And again, we'll talk a bit more about individual keyword research and things for that. But you know, it's worth also bearing in mind that there are a lot of regional differences. I guess the last slide I just want to give, one of the last slides, I have 2 more slides on just this big broad powerhouse part of the presentation. It's just, you know, just the size, the powerhouse that Germany is. Certainly in terms of manufacturing, but don't forget that it's also a powerhouse in terms of computers, like SAP and software, for retail, Metro, for sporting goods and consumer goods like Adidas, services, you know, so it really is a powerhouse. You will find, and most of our clients find that along the way, their biggest supplier or competitor or prospective buyer is German. So it is really a market. If you're going to be an exporter, if you're going to, you know, if you have international global ambitions, Germany is one of the big countries that you will have to look at some point. One last feature about the German economy is the so-called Mittelstand. Mittelstand is the term given to those strong, export-oriented SMEs, small mid-cap companies. They're really mid-cap companies. They typically are family-owned. Managers, the family is involved in management, and they are export-oriented from the very beginning. And they're highly innovative. They invest an awful lot in R&D. High-value manufactured products are typically the ones they go for, and they have each developed a niche in which they can claim a global leadership. And again, this is something that is very characteristic of the German economy. And when you're looking to attract your prospective buyers or your prospective clients, suppliers, competitors, employers, distributors, you may often be coming across these Mittelstand companies. And again, some of the characteristics, very cautious and demand a long-term commitment and a direct and loyal partnership. There's a big importance given on dialogue and on quality of product. This is something not to be dismissed, not to be taken for granted. So that ends my sort of brief, landscape brush of Germany. Now we're going to talk about the German online environment. Before we do, I want to launch a very quick poll. This is our first poll. And the poll I'd like to ask you now, are you currently doing business in Germany? I think I've misspelled Germany. Sorry. Are you currently doing business in Germany? If you are you thinking about it? Are you online via distributor, online only? I'm getting about 60-70% of you replying so far, and so far I think about the majority of you are already in Germany, but in market partners only. There are a few of you who are with an in-market partner and online. Bravo, happy to see that. And then there's a few of you who are also thinking about it. Thank you very much for that poll. I'm going to close the poll now, but that's the kind of thing that our poll is. And we'll have a few more polls as we go along. So now let's talk about Germany online and why we think exporters really benefit from German websites and how they can use German websites to their advantage. So just first, let's look at some of the big picture numbers. These slides always come from Hootsuite. They're very kind to provide all these things. This is just the core big slide about Germany. So we said population of 82 million. You'll see that an awful lot of telephones there. 131% have phones, so more phones than people. Internet users, 96% of the population, and this is from January last year, 96% of the population, that includes babies, grandmothers, everything, use the internet daily. A big portion of them, but less than 50%, also are on social media. I think what's really interesting, it's worth stopping a moment to think just how pervasive the internet has become. So and in Germany, it's a developed market. It's a very mature market actually for the internet. There were 4 million new internet users in 2019 alone. So there's still some growth going on. We could well get to 100% internet penetration, like some of the very mature internet markets. So as I said, 96% of the population is really saying something about internet penetration rates. It's one of the highest penetration rates in the world for that. What's also interesting is that they don't actually, I guess there are two other points to note. The first is that despite all these people on the internet, they don't actually spend as long as most Americans or most Brits. They spend less time, just about 4 hours a day on the internet. Now this compares to about 6 hours or 6.5 hours a day for Europe and the USA. So while social media is less than the average in the world, nevertheless, they are spending a good time, but they're very, very selective on how they do that. And let's see a little bit more about that. Let's dig down into that a little bit. So we said That's sort of for social media, about 38 million. That's 46% of the population on social media, and the average time spent per day is just sort of, on the internet. It's about 4.5 hours, on social media 1 hour. As I said, this compares to 6.5 hours internet use for America, and about 2 to 3 hours for social media use. So again, quite different on those numbers. And again, I think for our experience, and I think that we'll try and point this out to you, is that when they are on the internet, they're very serious and very targeted on the internet. They engage in the internet in a very specific way. Just a last sort of brief swish through before I hand over to Bella as well. I wanted just to give you a snapshot of German e-commerce. Now, we've done some e-commerce webinars just specifically on e-commerce in Germany and in Europe, if you have an interest in digging down in that. But what I wanted to point out here is that Germany, has over, well, this actually dates from last year, but is about the 5th largest in the world, the number 2 in Europe, at about 71 to 73 billion dollars equivalent. I think what's really interesting is that the top 10 retail sites are German. So it's, there's a real preference for those German ones. A couple of things to highlight, I guess, is, strong economy combined with pro-technology culture results in high European e-commerce rates. And that's still growing, a lot. If you take the top 3 Europeans, it's of course, 70% of EU e-commerce is UK, France, and Germany, but equally split. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Bella, and we're going to talk about social media in Germany. Bella, are you there, ready to go?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Susanna, and hi to everyone. As Susanna mentioned earlier, nearly everyone in Germany is online, so 96% of the Germans are online, but only less than the half use social media. But in general, the social media usage in Germany is a bit lower than most of the other European countries, and they are a bit cautious to adopt new social media platforms. But still, it is consistently growing, and it should be a part of your exporter strategy. In terms of the social media channels, so Facebook is still the number 1 social media platform in Germany, and this is by a long reach. 33% of all Germans use Facebook at least once per week, and most of them even daily. So when we are looking at strategies for our clients in Germany, we need to think about Facebook, so it's a must. Then there are also some differences in terms of using social media in Germany compared to, for instance, an American or British audience. For example, German businesses often use Google+. This is much more popular in Germany than is, for instance, in the US. But on the other hand, other social media channels like Twitter are not that strong in Germany. Probably because they have a limit in characters compared to the length of German words, but I think it's also that Germans don't consider it serious enough, because Germans like quite a lot of content and not something just short and snappy. They prefer longer content with more substance usually. And then there is another platform in Germany. It's called Xing, and you can see it on the table. It is a little bit like LinkedIn, but specific to the German market, and it's a great place you can use to find employees, to find new distributors, but also to get in touch with industry-specific forums, for instance. As you can see on the table, Xing is just ahead of LinkedIn when it comes to usage. Yeah, then there are some characteristics we listed, and mainly they are cautious, discreet, and compliance aware when it comes to social media usage. So it's nearly the same features that we find on how Germans use websites. We will expand this a bit later, but it's just really important to underline that Germans have different view on social media, and that it's really different than most of the UK or the US audiences we have. They are just a bit more cautious, and the content is a bit more seriously than other audiences in other countries. So you should really focus on this when you create your German social media strategy. You can also see that in how they respond to social media. So Germans will actually read your content and not just give a like and don't even read it. Germans also like to leave reviews, so make sure that you're ready to respond to them. And yeah, now we can have a bit of a deeper look on one of the most popular platforms in Germany, Facebook. So Facebook, of course, in Germany is in German. So just to let you know that Facebook exists in over 1,000 languages. And of course, a German client is used to being able to see anything they want on Facebook in German. And as mentioned before, Facebook is the biggest platform, the social media platform in Germany, and it's always a good starting point to get into the German social media world. That's why I summarized some facts and best practices we can go through. And the first one is Germans hesitate to like posts without reading a content or linked website before. So first of all, they want to know what a page is about, and then they decide whether they like it or not. So don't get disappointed when a Facebook post gets only a low number of likes or comments. It doesn't mean that people are not reading your content. It just means that they first want to read it before they are giving a like. And it also means, like, if you get a like of them, you can be sure that people actually read your content and they actually like it and not just like it without reading it at all. This also means that we often set goals about engagement rather than an absolute number of likes when we do our social media strategy for Germany. In terms of content, you should try to create content which is as useful and relevant for your readers as possible. Addressing problems, for instance, helpful guidelines or also solutions are a great way of creating awareness for your business and also to engage people in the German market on social media. Okay, and then we outlined a second platform in Germany when it comes to social media, which is a rising platform in Germany. It is Instagram. Instagram in Germany has over 21 million users, and that makes over 25% of the entire population. So it's also a really big platform in Germany. And Germany has more or less the same number of women and men on Instagram, and the people are usually in the age between 25 and 34. Instagram in general is a great platform when it comes to engagement, but that counts especially for the German market, because Germany is actually in the top 10 of the highest Instagram engagement rate in the world. So it's a great way to engage people by using Instagram. But Instagram is also a great platform to create or increase your purchases. So it's not just about engagement or brand awareness, it's also a good way to increase your purchases. 48% of all Instagram users said they made a purchase because of a brand's video they watched on Instagram. So this is also a great way. And yeah, talking about a bit more strategic way, when you designed your marketing strategy, it's always important to be aligned with your overall business strategy. So that's why we wanted to give you some examples. So it's a good starting point to check, okay, what do you want to achieve first before going to the German market? And this counts for mainly all the different social media channels. So for example, if you have the business objective of grow the brand, then as mentioned before, awareness is a great social media goal. And the metric would be you could increase the followers and shares of people from your content. Then if you want to say, okay, we want to turn customers into advocates, then engagement is your go-to social media goal. This means people are commenting, they are liking or even mentioning your site or your page in their own posts. Then we have the business objective, drive leads and sales is also an important one. As mentioned before, on Instagram, you can also use it to increase your sales. Then the metric would be conversion, and this would be shown with website clicks, email signups, and so on. And the last one is to improve your customer retention. So it's about having a consumer that already bought your products and they could write a testimonial about you or a social media sentiment.
Bella, terrific. That was a great whistle-stop tour of some of the main sort of characteristics of Germans online and how to also engage with them. Now let's talk a bit about sort of some of the main great websites that we need for Germany. And one of the first things that I want to do is just step back a second from Germany, just give some basic premises here about how to evaluate and how to build websites for international markets. And I guess the point that we have is that anything online has to be very client focused. And that's why, you know, we're spending so much time detailing what a German, you know, what you have to know your buyer persona. So your target buyer persona in Germany, what are they like? What are they going to do? How do you influence them? And using your web tools. So that's why, you know, everything online, whether it's your website or your social media and your online marketing, has to be very client focused. In other words, the client is at the center, not the company. And as head of marketing and sales, it's your job to make sure that some of those arrows that point customer to customer or customer to company are talking about your company in a favorable, trustworthy way, in a way that gives quality and solutions to problems for your customer so that they begin to trust you and build the trust that you need for the buyer journey. So this is sort of just a diagram to put that in, but I guess the other way of saying, you know, why does this happen? Why is it client focused? And how did this happen? We have to also go back then to search engines. And as Bella mentioned, obviously, if so, you know, Facebook obviously in Germany is in German. Well, guess what? Google in Germany is in German. And you know, so search engines are basically localized. They are basically client focused, market specific. So Google Deutschland is different from Google UK or Google Mexico or Google US, and the search results will be different. So search engines, they structure the internet. They rank things and they sort things, and they'll rank them and sort them according to the searcher, according to the person sitting in Berlin or Hamburg or whatever. So if Google Deutschland does not think that your website in, you know, Arkansas is of relevance to the person in Germany, it will not come up on the page, no matter how many, you know, great keywords you might have. So your German website, in order to be relevant to the German prospect buyer, has to be fully localized. And again, we've done different webinars on this, so I won't go through in greater detail, but I've listed it all for you on one page. What is a localized website? So what do we have to do? What is a localized website? And localized websites, I mean, translation is one element, one criteria. I've listed 10 criteria here. One of the criteria is to translate it. But you need to make sure that it is a registered domain name in the right place, that it's hosted in the right place, that it's got the correct content management system. There's a lot of things that go into making sure your website is localized. And here we're talking about localized for the German market. So again, we have other webinars just on this topic that, you know, or you can give a shout out if you want me to go into more detail. But my point really is that a localized website is not about, I mean, you cannot be relevant to a German prospective buyer if you're just using your US or UK or Japanese website. It's just not going to work. It's not going to be considered relevant. So with that, I'm going to launch my second poll. And this time I hope I've got the spelling all right. Do you have localized websites for your export markets? So please jump on the poll, as it were, with your mouse. Do you have localized websites already for your export markets? You know, yes, you have them for all, for a few. Are you thinking about it? No, not at all. And I'm very happy to say that it's we're still collecting responses, but many of you, I'd say just over half, have yes for a few export markets, and there's a very, very, very few of you who have it for your main export markets, for all of your main export markets. But we're very happy to see that the majority of you are beginning to have localized websites and have that in a few of your export markets. Great, lovely, good to see it. Okay, I'm going to pass back to Bella now, and we're going to talk about great German websites. Bella.
Sure. So the first thing, and I say it again, you need to be aware of when it comes to a German website is the best German websites are in German. Even though 70% of the Germans speak English, Germans still prefer to read their online content in their own language. So that makes German the third most common language on the internet, and Germans can find almost everything they need in their mother tongue. So they don't really have an incentive to search in English, and when they do, so it's usually to find specific information or because they are very persistent in search for a specific niche product, but usually it wouldn't happen, so these are only exceptions. Most of the Germans will search in German, so if you only have your US or your UK website, your website probably won't pop up in their search results and you will remain invisible to the German Google. With a German website, you also should be prepared for long and compound words. So if you translate your text from English into German, your end text will be probably longer. So one reason for that is that the Germans have a really complex grammar and a greater use of pronouns, but it's also because of the compound words. So words, as you can see here on the slide, words like Massenkommunikationsdienstleistungsunternehmen, which means companies providing mass communication services, are not really rare in Germany. So we have a lot of words like this. So one thing you need to be prepared for is that it could change your website layout, and it might be adjusted, especially if it's a mobile version of the website. You might have to adjust the size of the words. Then in the German language, also specific English words exist, so which might not always be used the same way as in English. So as an example, we have the word handy. It's a typical German word which means mobile phone, and yeah, so it's an English word, but it's kind of been Germanized, so we use it for a different meaning than English people would. Then also something you should know in German is that we have two versions of addressing a person, the informal du and the formal sie. These are two versions to say you to a person, and in Germany only younger people or really well-known people are addressed in the informal you. Usually business contacts are addressed in the formal version. So if you are not sure how to address your prospects, just choose the formal version of you to be on the safe side, and you don't want to offend anyone by addressing them in the wrong way. And besides that, it is also normal to address people by their surnames rather than their first names. So it's also, I think, a big difference to most of the US and UK clients you can have. Then another thing for great German websites, which is important, are keywords as part of the localization. And you have to be really careful when it comes to the right keywords for German websites. So this is essential for search engine optimization, but in general, it's also important for German generally. In part, this is because Germans love to invent new words. So this means often there is a number of ways how to translate, for instance, a product name or a service. And because Germans love to create new words by combining existing ones, it can be like a bit tricky to find the right keyword. So your translator might suggest a term that describes your product well, but it doesn't mean that Germans would actually search for this product. And yes, so this is why you definitely should renew and update your keywords on a frequently basis. Then another thing you should know is that Germans love abbreviations. I guess this is the flip side of those long compound words I mentioned earlier. So often the best keyword is actually the abbreviated version rather than the long multi-syllable word you could have. And then I have a little example for you for how you could use different keywords in different countries. So in Germany, the word Eistüte exists, which would mean ice cream cone. And as you can see on the graph, 94% would use this word in Germany. And then there is an Austrian word. So Austrians are speaking German, but they have their own German dialect, and the Austrian word which they would prefer rather than Eistüte would be Stanitzel. It's a word which wouldn't be used in Germany at all. Yeah, but 64% prefer the word Stanitzel over using Eistüte. Okay, and this brings us to the last slide of creating great German websites, which is content. And it's the next point you should keep in mind when you create a German website. It is that you should have a strong and relevant content. So don't be afraid to add some text and explanations. Your German prospects will check them all out. So also providing additional content for your German website is a good thing. So Germans like specifications and additional information, or even application examples. So it's a good thing to add them to your website. And obviously you shouldn't flood the website with too much content on a single page. So a good practice is to display the most relevant content on the website itself, and then provide additional information through downloadable documents, for instance. And besides that, in the German market, you should always use the correct grammar, spelling, and vocabulary. This is an absolute must for a good impression in the German market, because in Germany, it's like your website represents your brand and your business, and a low quality or poorly translated content gives the impression of a low quality product, and this is nothing you want for your customers. And that leads us to the final point, the localization of the content. So localization is an important part of the content creation, and much more than just the simple translation of words. So localization starts with currencies and measurements unit and goes up to changing the content, phrases, images, or regulations. So the point of localization is to give the local prospects and clients the impression of a local German website and not just the translation of any content. So the translation is like the icing on the cake.
Bella, terrific. A great summary. I want to now jump in to discuss another major issue in Germany, which is compliance. I think it's not an exaggeration to say that the Germans lead the world in terms of digital compliance awareness, and any website that is not digitally compliant will be seen as very dodgy indeed, very negatively seen. Now, Germany has long had an extra layer of digital compliance even before the GDPR, even at the time when you had, you know, in the beginning of 1995, the EU Data Protection Act, Germany introduced Impressum. Impressum is a Latin word, and it means imprint. It means the legal disclosure, or the statement of the ownership, if you like. It's basically a fancier word of saying about us, or terms and conditions, and that has to be on every website. It is consistent legal term, especially in Germany, but it's really seen as absolutely a must. And then really Germans were really at the forefront of pushing through the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which came into effect in May 2018. So again, we have webinars and a lot of assets on GDPR. If you want, we can discuss that separately, but giving you just a little tiny, you know, the main thing, if you are a non-German or a non-EU company, does it apply to you? If you are looking for European prospects or employees, or have any European data, personal data, then it applies to you. It applies to any EU person, by any company inside or outside the EU that offers goods or services to EU citizens. I would also say it is the first time we've had a digital compliance legislation which has real teeth. There are big, heavy fines if you're not compliant to it. So it's, you know, up to 20 million euros, for example, 4% of your company's global revenues, whichever is higher. And you know, so the other question that a lot of non-European companies ask is, can I transfer data outside the EU? No is the answer, except if you're GDPR compliant. If you are not GDPR compliant, then you cannot. The only exception is if you are GDPR compliant. So, some of you may already be members or be compliant with something called Privacy Shield. But that it does not exonerate you from the full privacy and data privacy from GDPR. So if you are feeling that GDPR is difficult or whatever, well, I tell you what, I'm going to launch my third poll. How about that? Are your websites digitally compliant? And if so, are you aware of them? Are your websites digitally compliant? Yes, no, not sure. Some of you say no, but we are aware of the problem, so maybe you're working on the problem. Only on your home website. I can see that a lot of you are very unsure about it, actually. But at least a lot of you actually say you're aware of the problems. And the majority are saying no, but we are aware of the problems, which is great. And a few are saying, maybe about a quarter are saying, yes, we are digitally compliant on our home website and our major export markets. Well done for you. So this leads me to my last slide on this section, which is just to say, and it's a little tiny bit of, I guess, putting it out there, advertisement for us. If you are struggling with GDPR, we do have solutions, and get in touch with us, and we can either get your European website solely GDPR compliant, or walk you through it and help you out there. We have I think a good track record on doing that. So case studies and best practices before we move on to questions and things. And I see that there are some questions. Please put more questions in. I can see that we've already got about 6, but I would love to have more questions. So case studies and best practices. We try and put a lot of case studies on our website. Please go to our website, check out the success stories of clients, and you'll see a lot of videos, short videos, 1 minute, 2 minute videos with existing clients. And going through those helps you understand the different strategies and choices that an exporter might have taken. What kind of online tools did they take? What kind of websites they build, in what kind of markets? Why were they choosing this strategy? So that's a good way of going about it. But let's now look at some of the ones that are specific to Germany. I'm going to turn back to Bella to talk us through those ones.
Great, thanks, Susanna. So Rawhide is actually a great example of online localization. The company is privately held, a US company, and it's a manufacturer which works in a variety of different markets. And they typically have an in-market partner, so a distributor who look after the logistics of the product and also the after sales, and generally act as contact person for the market. But Rawhide itself is responsible for the marketing, so the company got in touch with us back in 2015 to start looking to see how to increase their sales across Europe. So we started working with them in 2015, and initially the focus was brand awareness. So the company needed to build up its prospect base, and as the product was innovative, it needed brand awareness as well as market education in Europe. Then we started building an international online presence for Germany, the UK, and France, and followed by our online marketing program. Today, Rawhide has extended their online performance to 8 international markets. And also, Rawhide's main goal was creating brand awareness in all the international markets. And after we got their brand recognized in the target markets, the goal was selling the products with their distributors or directly to the clients. So we also adapted the online presence and strategy accordingly. In terms of the German market, this meant localized websites. So obviously it meant translating the content content, but it also meant integrating the right German keywords and also adjusting the images. Because as you can see on the picture here, the trucks in the US look different to German trucks we have on the left side. There's a typical truck, how it would look in Germany. So the US trucks are way bigger and it just wouldn't work out to compare to German trucks. Then we have another case study, another example of one of our clients. It's Bullman. And Bullman Products is an American manufacturer of paper cutters. And what makes them special is they have a lot of different verticals, such as school and art supply, but also retail, industrial packaging, or also food services. And one of our main responsibilities for Bullman is creating and localizing blog content. So we are creating blogs for them on a frequently basis. And here is an example of a blog we created for Bullman and then promoted on Facebook. So we created that blog on Easter classroom decorations and then localized and translated it to the German market, because in Germany, Easter is a big event. So a lot of families come together and celebrate it. It's, I think, a lot bigger than it's, for instance, in the US or in the UK. So it was important to promote the topic in the German market. And in this case, our target audience were teachers in Germany. And we had the objective to drive them to the blog in order to create awareness for Bullman's paper cutters for art classes. So the metrics to measure the performance were page views on the landing page, URL, as well as ad post engagement.
Ella, terrific, great examples there. I wanted to highlight another feature, which I'm sure any of you who are doing international business is aware of the fact that Germany is the #1 country for international trade fairs. From our experience, one of the best practices is to use those trade fairs to jumpstart your export success and to get international websites. So, you know, with a localized website, you're able just to reach into more target prospect buyers and sort of shout out that you are attending that trade fair and are available. So there's something like, so as I said, Germany is the #1 location in the world for hosting international trade fairs. There's something like about 150 international trade fairs in Germany every year. They attract them like 10 million visitors or something like that. It's just amazing. There's some of them, for example, Hannover Messe, which I've taken here as a flag. It's one of the largest in their industry. It attracts buyers from across the world, not just from Germany and its European neighbors, but across the world. So again, a really fantastic place to connect and use your localized website for maximum. In our experience, and again, this comes partly from work we've done with Frankfurt Messe, we saw that localized websites combined with online marketing gave a 40% increase in leads to a trade fair at a trade fair event. Now, if you think that trade fairs are very expensive businesses, it really is worth investing in and making sure that you're optimizing your trade fair through social media. My last poll, please. Do you use online marketing? Do you use them at home, internationally? Do you leave that up to your distributors? Are you thinking about it? Do you do it only in your home market, internationally, and so on? Actually, quite a few of you allow your distributors and partners to do that for you. But a nice number are also involved in your home market and in your export markets. So that's great. But I do note that there's quite a few of you who allow your distributors and partners to do that for you, which is a choice to be made. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to close that poll. That finishes our polls for the webinar today. Now let's get down to final conclusions, takeaways, Q&A. And again, we have had a few more questions coming in. We've got about 10 questions, but please keep them coming. I guess our major takeaway is that as an exporter, a localized website is a fantastic tool. everybody today is online. I mean, we saw that in Germany, 96% of the population is online. And so how do you reach 96% of the population? Well, through a localized website. So get found, be understood, do business, get a localized website, use international online marketing to reach your buyer personas. So that's our first takeaway here. The second takeaway is that websites and social media are customer-centric and market-focused. And that's what we mean by localized. And again, I've listed those 10 criteria just for the website localization. But a localized website is customer-centric and market-focused. In other words, puts the customer at the center, and that is where you need to be if you want to reach your buyer persona, especially in large, rich, sophisticated markets like Germany. Our third takeaway really is about online in Germany and best practices. And I've listed sort of the 5 best, which I think Bella has really gone through. One is clearly just have a localized German website. That acts as your local platform. That is your German real estate, put it that way. The next is to know your audience, know your buyer persona. Where are they going online? Which trade shows are they attending? That sort of thing. And that goes together with number 3. It's just to choose the right social media platform to reach them. If they're in certain verticals, they'll go more towards Instagram. If there are other ones, they'll go more towards a Facebook or a Zing. The next one, clearly, I think we've made a couple of times, invest in outstanding content. Make sure you delight your clients and your prospects with the content. Solve their problems. Don't talk about yours in terms of your company. And the 5th, which is absolutely essential for Germany, is to be digitally compliant. There's a lot of resources on our website, and I've even attached one to this webinar. If you want, you can pull it off. You should be able to pull it off the webinar now and just download it. It's called Handouts, and it's a little infographic of the Germany's online environment. Otherwise, you can just check out our resources at ibt.onl, IBT Online, for other resources that you would like to have. That we can give you, and then there's just an absolute wealth of resources about the online world and about Germany. Now I'm going to go straight into questions because, in fact, we've got quite a few, which is great. The first one I'm going to go straight into for Bella. Bella, where would you start? What would be the first steps in terms of social media marketing for Germany? Where would you start if you were just beginning to look at social media marketing in Germany, Bella?
Sure. So I would say it depends on the business sector and audience you want to target. So, for example, if you are a B2B or B2C company, but also the most important thing to start is always setting your goals. So setting your goals will make sure that you think about your target audience as well as the most important achievements you want for your business, and also to define your strategy. So this is how I would start. For instance, if you just want to start out in Germany, maybe your main goal would be brand awareness. And then the social media strategy has to be about brand and thought leadership. But if you have a distributor and already do some business in, for instance, in Germany, then maybe the social media goal is to increase awareness or the clicks or even the conversions. So in that case, Facebook is probably also a good channel you want to use, as it's the largest, as we mentioned before. And if you are a fast-moving consumer goods company, then you could consider other channels like Instagram, for instance. But I would say Facebook is a must-have in Germany. But as mentioned before, everything depends on your business goals.
Thank you very much, Bella. And I apologize. I think I clicked something too fast there. So I've gone back to the first slide, but that's fine. I have another question just about domain names. There's a couple of questions actually about domain names. I'm going to sort of try and centralize some of them. Yes, we think it's very important that you buy the domain names for your key export markets. So if you're looking to have a German website, then buy the .de. And there's a lot of different types of domain names you can buy depending on who you want to reach in that market, or how you want to link it back to your core website, your home website. But in general, the direct country top level domain name is the best and most efficient to be ranked in Google as a general sort of statement. So, for example, Germany, that would be .de. For the UK, it would be .co.uk. There is an alternative, which is if you want one which is sort of all of the EU, you can do .eu. I don't know if the UK is going to be in that anymore or whatever, but given the mess they're in, but .eu will cover the main European markets, and then you can actually do a /de and do derivatives from that. That's sort of more a shotgun approach versus a sort of laser approach. And again, you might find you're better off doing that sort of laser approach of just focusing on the top level domain name for that. I'm getting quite a few questions as well about who owns the domain name and so on. I believe quite a few of you seem to have distributors who own your domain name, or partners or in-market partners who own your domain name. Personally, we don't always think that's ideal. This is your online real estate, as I said, and really it is the best way to grow your brand. And so we always think that it's best that the company itself owns that domain name. And there are a lot of different places you can go to buy it. Anywhere. There's a lot of different services to look and see if your domain name is free. But we generally recommend companies to buy already and keep in storage, if nothing else, the main domain names that they've chosen for their core target export markets. And that can be a good handful of them. Generally, these things are under $100 each. So they're worth just buying as an asset for your company. So that's it on domain names. I have another one about hosting, which is about hosting. Is it possible to host in Germany? Can I host in Germany or in Europe? What is that about? Part of localizing your website is to make sure that you are hosted locally. That improves up and download speeds and make sure that you are relevant and ranked better by Google and the search engines. It's perfectly safe. There are very, very large companies. I mean, Amazon, for example, or data service companies who will do backup and host for you. We use a particularly large one that has big servers across the world for our client basis, and it's actually an American company originally. I have another question also about a sort of more technical side, which is about digital compliance. How do you even know if you're digitally compliant? Well, I would say, as a first off, if you look at your website, I would say there are 3 giveaways. The one is, do you have a privacy policy? 2, do you have a cookies policy? And those policies have to have express opt-ins clauses. So it's not just something that you can put in and then you automatically agree to. You have to have a pop-up which actually says, yes, I agree to this. And the third is something called HTTPS on your website, the security SSL lock, which is important. And Google, if you're sitting in Europe and if I come across a website that is not secure, is not encrypted, is not secure, so it does not have the S on the HTTPS, then Google puts up a big yellow triangle in my corner of my screen, says this site is not secure. So please, if you have a non-European website, please make sure that you have a minimum of digital compliance. Right, I'm looking at the time and we're pretty well out of time. I wanted to keep this. I would please ask you still to fill out the survey, which pop up on your screen as soon as I close this webinar. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you most of all, Bella, for participating and joining me today. That's very kind of you. Thank you all for listening and all of your questions. I do realize we haven't answered them all. We'll get back to you individually with answers. Thank you. Happy exporting. And if we don't see you before, have a great festive season for this time. Thank you. Happy exporting. Bye-bye.